Interview presented by Canaceutics Medical Dispensary, proudly serving New Mexico cannabis patients with trustworthy all-natural medicine since 2010.
Welcome to Cage Minds. I'm Micah Frankel. Got a good one in store for you today. We are talking about bare knuckle boxing, BKFC 47, July 14th. It's fight week, and I got to appreciate Josh Dyer for taking some time ahead of a huge interim light heavyweight title fight. It's a rematch. It's a lot of things. Taking some time out today to talk with me. Sir, I appreciate you. How you doing?
Hey, doing really good. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Got to get right into it right away. You started in this sport about 2 years after the promotion really got going off the ground. 2018, I think, was their first show. You're in there 2020, BKFC 12. What was at that time your thought process towards, let me take the gloves off. Let me leave MMA behind and give this a try?
Well, that was actually my second bare knuckle fight. I fought for one other promotion before them, which was Valor. And I did break my hand on the first punch I threw. So I found out real quick that taking those gloves off, you got to be really precise with the way you throw. And I also found out that I'm a lot more devastating without gloves on. So my punches do a lot more damage to people, and my hands are very well designed for this sport. I got really big fists. I'm not sure if you can see them over here, but these guys work really, really well for smacking dudes in my division. But yeah, with the gloves on, it's still devastating, but you take them off and it's a whole nother element for me.
So just to give MMA fans kind of something they could wrap their head around, what size gloves were you wearing at MMA?
Double extra large.
Oh, okay. Those are some big meat hooks.
Yeah. Double X is the smallest I could handle. Triple X's, I think, are getting closer to Brock Lesnar's hands, but I fought in triple X's before, and those were much more comfortable for me. I can't fight in anything smaller than a double X. The double X is almost too tight.
Well, obviously you have big hands, so you want to know what it feels like to have the small hands. But do you think that helps with perpetuating the impact and causing damage?
Yeah, it's worked really well for me. I've had to strengthen my bones. Even though I've got big hands, I hit really hard. So I typically do break my hands. But I've strengthened my bones up over the last 3 or 4 years. So they're starting to break a lot less now. And yeah, it works pretty damn good. I see guys with, smaller hands. They seem like they develop a few more fractures and stuff like that. But no, I've had a lot of good luck lately.
So you break your hand in Valor, but it was still a love for the sport led you to, let me find BKFC and continue with the sport.
Yep, absolutely. It was my first pay-per-view fight, and that I got the call to go and fight for BKFC from the Valor fight, which was to me my most devastating fight, the most views I'd ever had. And I got the opportunity to go and fight Jared Warren for that debut, and I just was really looking forward to it. I wanted to show people what I was capable of. I felt like I'd found my sport, like where my niche, was going to be. And I proved that in round 3 against Jared whenever I got the finish. So after that, they put me up against Lorenzo Hunt, which I knew he was the baddest dude in the world at the time, but I'd never backed down from a fight in my life. So I took the fight, and it didn't go my way, but I was the first dude that ever made it past 3 rounds with the Juggernaut. So I felt like it was a somewhat of an accomplishment, but I had to redefine my style after that because I was too predictable. So I had to change my entire style, make it more tricky. And I tested that on Dakota Cochran, which led to a 90-second finish against him. And then against Riggs, I was beating the daylights out of the guy, and unfortunately we clashed heads. But I was going for that first round knockout. I promised a first round every fight, and I've been delivering it. Out of all my fights, they've all ended in first round knockouts, except for the Juggernaut and Jared Warren. Those are the only 2 dudes that made it out.
The first BKFC fights with Jared Warren. Did you think, okay, I'm moving past this guy, I'll never see him again? Or did you keep an eye on him while he's still going through the sport as you're separately doing your thing?
I was hoping I'd never have to fight him again personally, because I'd never hit a dude so many times in my career and had them continue coming at me. That was the first time. I must have hit him close to 100 times. That might be an over exaggeration, but I hit him at least 50 times clean. And the guy just kept coming and coming. So I found out he had a real good chin. and he also broke my nose on his first connection as well. So I knew that he had bone crushing power. So it's not an ideal fight for me, to hop in there and deal with someone that's basically like a mirror image of myself. It's just a brutal, badass fight, and the fans tend to love it. I heard every time we smashed each other, the blood would just fly into the air and hover like a mist over the crowd. They were like, it was the craziest thing we'd ever seen. Everybody I talked to that night mentioned the mist. They're like, every time you guys hit each other, it was crazy. Like the referee had blood all over him. The judges had blood. They're like, it was just hanging there like a cloud. I was like, oh, that's insane.
When they stop the fight after the knockdown to check out the cut, internally, are you saying yes, 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 please? This would be a great way to end this.
Normally that's exactly what I would be thinking, but I was actually hoping that he would be able to continue because I would not want to have a fight stop due to a cut. It's very embarrassing, and especially when you've got more. Something as simple as your skin breaking it's a crappy way to go out. And so I was hoping that I would be able to secure an actual finish against him. So whenever they cleared him to continue, I gave him some knuckles, gave him a little hand bump, and I was just like, hell yeah, man. Now I have the opportunity to finish him like a man, which is what I was really hoping for.
That first time we see you in BKFC, because I didn't get to watch the Valor fight, we see your clinch become a major weapon of yours. And again, that comes up in the Cochran fight. Did you always know with the rule set that would be somewhere where you could really impose your will?
Yeah. Yeah, I knew that. I have a strong wrestling background, and I knew that pulling down on his head would put a lot of stress on his lower back. And even if it wasn't successful as far as me landing punches, it was going to burn out his body fast. So especially if you haven't wrestled much, I knew that was going to be very effective, and it was. So yeah, I like to keep my hands on my opponent. I've got really good accuracy and I got fast hands. And the more I touch an opponent, the more I like to throw my hands. So you'll notice that like once my hands start connecting, they just find their home. The distance is gauged. I don't really miss much. So I'll take punches because I know that my hands will find where they need to go. And it's from a lot of fights. I've been doing this for a while, and my accuracy is something that I really, really tried to develop for the last 3 or 4 years so that I could land my strikes. The more punches I land, the less my opponents like to fire back, and the better I typically do in my fights. So regardless of what's happening to my body, my hands land, and that puts me in good positions.
I can see there's just an excitement on your face as we're talking about the sport that you really like it. Like, what was it that came alive in you that you felt in that Valor fight that really sparked this passion for the sport?
The thing that got me the most was that he was a UFC veteran, that he had a position. I mean, I watched him on The Ultimate Fighter. He was being coached by Josh Koscheck and George St. Pierre. I watched Dana White go, dang, this guy's crazy. He's got balls. He's the red Mohawk guy, and I knew that if I could beat him, that I was a somebody. And I told everybody that I knew I could finish him because I knew the way our styles were going to match up, that mine would win. And I knew it would be a first round knockout, and he'd never been finished in 16 professional fights. He'd never been finished. So I knew that I was going to be the first one based on the way that we fight. And I secured that win. And it fueled me. It gave me all the energy I needed to continue in the sport. I like finishes. I promise finishes. I've got almost a 100% finish rate. I mean, of all the wins that I've ever had in my career, if I win, I finish that person. If I go to a decision, I typically lose. So I like to turn up to a pace that it's gonna secure a finish, whether it's me losing or him losing. I want it to be a finish. So I set a pace that a decision win is not achievable, and that's what I go for. When the fans watch me, I really want them to be entertained, and that's the style I built is designed to be entertaining. It's a high damage, high velocity. There's not a whole lot of downtime. There's not a lot of circling. There's not a lot of feeling out. There's not a lot of, I hit you once, I back up, you hit me once, I back up. I find the fans like watching people that fight the whole time, regardless of who wins. They want to see action. They come to the sport because that's what they want to see. So that's what I offer.
It's BKFC 47. You've been with the company since BKFC 12. Even before that, you're in the sport with Valor. Do you feel something special to being almost there at the ground level from where this is really starting to become a bigger entity known across the country and the world?
Yeah, it's extremely special because if I hadn't have gotten in at that time, I would have never gotten this opportunity. I'm not a superstar as far as my fans go. I don't have a big following and I don't got a big media base. All I have is nonstop ferocity. And, they're bringing in superstars that can sell out, $1 million shows. They can make a lot of money for the company in the sport. So I'm just grateful that they chose to give me the opportunity to come and smash up on their stars. The way I look at it, they're doing me a huge favor by giving me this opportunity to fight for a title. In today's world, it's all about pay-per-view sales. Skills are great and all, but you got to be able to make this company money or else they're not going to be able to flourish in the long run. And another company is going to rise up and take their position. So I personally didn't think they were going to offer me this position, potentially because I stood a very good chance of winning and I was potentially not going to get them as many sales. So I'm very grateful that I got in at an early time like this.
Lorenzo Hunt, Dakota Cochran, Joe Riggs. Those are some pretty cool names to have on the resume. Either way to look at to say, if you're saying yourself that you don't have the biggest name right now, that had to have helped grow it, though. You've been in there with guys that pretty recognizable.
Yeah, these dudes, they're the baddest guys in the world in this sport at this present time. And they've been doing this for a long time. All those guys, they're creeping up in the 30s, getting close to 40s. They put their time in and they've earned their spot. But yes, I've never turned down a fight and I truly believe that I can beat anyone. So I go into a fight very prepared for a victory and I put myself in the best position to get those victories. I'm an intelligent fighter and I try to come across as slightly less intelligent and more of a brawler. But I found that being underestimated is one of the most powerful things that you can do in the entire game. And there's a few fighters that do that really well, one of which is Isaac Doolittle. And I know he doesn't like it when I tell people, that he's a genius, but he's got like 3 freaking college degrees. He beat the shit out of Mike Richmond, who beat the shit out of Lorenzo for most of the round. So, you're looking at a guy that's up there with the baddest dudes on the planet. And he acts like he's a dumb kid from Kansas. And I'm just like, nah. I know the game you're playing here, bro. But I'll keep it a secret. I'll let everybody underestimate you. I don't want to give away all your advantages here. But I play on those same rules. I was a cheerleader in college. I was the captain of South Dakota State University cheerleading team. It's one of the few facts that made a lot of people underestimate me early in my career because they thought I was just some queer that was going to show up and get my ass kicked. And I would beat the shit out of these guys. And then they'd come and beg me not to tell anybody afterwards. They'd be like, dude, please don't tell anybody you beat me. Please, I cannot have anybody knowing I got beat by a cheerleader. And then my buddies would jump up, the captain of the cheerleaders. And I would just laugh so hard, man. Underestimation is huge. And I do play on that quite a bit.
I don't know if you actually know, people, audience, but the level of athleticism you have to jump, turn, tumble, and not to mention throw other human bodies in the air. That's quite impressive if you actually know athletics. So did you have was that a high school background or something you just got into collegiately?
Nope. I was strictly a wrestler in high school. I did track and football to stay in shape for wrestling. When I got to SDSU, I didn't get the scholarship that I was rooting for. And I was working 2 jobs. I was in Air Force ROTC. I was going to school full time and I didn't have time to do 2-a-days, and work out on my own on top of that. So, I was doing 3 PTs a week in the Air Force and I had so much on my plate that I couldn't wrestle without the scholarship. So I was just trying to figure out things to do. And, I was doing laps around the track and a couple of cuties walked up and they were like, hey, you should come and be a cheerleader. And I was just like, probably not going to happen. They were like, well, you can touch her butt. And I was like, well, you got me. So I ended up giving that a shot. After a year, became the captain. Never missed a practice. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Throwing girls 15, 20 feet in the air, built my shoulder strength up quite a bit and my legs as well. So whenever I throw my punches, they hurt. It translates so well into MMA and in bare knuckle. Most people don't understand that, but I got hurt more in cheerleading than I ever got hurt in the sport of fighting. I mean, you throw a girl up 15 feet and she didn't tie her shoelace all the way. Now she's coming down and it hooks your pinky and it breaks your finger. You toss the girl up, she doesn't stay tight. Her elbow hits your clavicle. Now you got a broken clavicle. You toe pitch a chick up 30 feet. She comes down and Spartan kicks you in the chest. And now you're flying back 15 feet and you're going to the hospital with a concussion. You wake up 3 days later. Now, so we made shirts one year because that happened to our buddies. And the shirt said, and you woke up in the hospital 3 days later. And nobody else knew what that meant, but we thought that was hilarious, and it's just a lot of ways, to get hurt in that sport. So, when I'd go and fight, I'd get very minor injuries in comparison. So it's a tough sport.
How did you go from cheerleading, from college to finding combat sports to getting yourself into getting punched in the face?
When I was a kid, I watched George St. Pierre when he was coming out and working his way up the rankings, and he looked so cool, and respectful and kind. And I was like, I'm respectful and I'm kind, but I can't fight. I could never be him. He's a champion of the whole world, and I wanted him to win so badly because he never acted arrogant and like a typical fighter. And when he won the world championship, it blew my mind, and then he just kept winning and winning and winning. And when he would walk out, you'd have all the biggest celebrities in the world there watching him. All the football players, the baseball players, these are all guys that are dominating their sport. But what do they watch when they want to be entertained? They watch fighting because it's the realest, most brutal sport in the world. There's no team to back you up. It's you against whoever steps in the ring with you. And when they close that gate and you see George St. Pierre standing there and the whole world is watching, all the baddest dudes in the world in the arena watching you. So I'm just like, that's where I want to be. When the lights all come down and it's just you and your opponent. And when they raise your hand in victory, and in that moment, you're the baddest dude in the planet. The whole wide world is watching you because you did it. That lit a fire in me that I didn't realize was going to blossom until later. And when I was in college, I was a broke kid. I didn't have any way to pay for school. And at the restaurant I was working at, Applebee's, they had a cook out of the kitchen named Doug Jenkins, who was ranked #1 in the Midwest as an amateur. And he was training guys out of his kitchen. And they invited me to the back of the kitchen of the restaurant. And they're like, hey, Josh, would you like to stop over at my place and learn how to cage fight? And I was like, fuck yeah, I want to learn how to cage fight. So I showed up and I got tapped out by this skinny dude. They called him Big Sexy, this tall, skinny guy, freaking about snapped my arm off in about 15 seconds. And I was a state wrestler, bro. I thought I was a somebody. And they humbled me so quick that I realized I didn't know shit about fighting. And I was hooked, and at that moment on, I wanted to be a part of it. And, I signed up for my first fight a month later after training every day. And, I told my mom and dad, I was like, hey guys, I'm going to be a cage fighter. And they looked at me and said, no, you're not. I was an 18-year-old kid. And my mom said, no, you're not. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you can't fight. And, I'm a Southern boy. My mom was Miss Georgia. She's Southern. She knows in the South, you listen to your mom and daddy or else they'll whoop your ass. So I was just like, yes, ma'am. And I called up the promoter and I was like, hey man, I can't do it. And they're like, why? And I'm like, my mama said no. And he's like, what? And in the Midwest, they didn't spank your kids growing up. They didn't know what the fuck a switch tree was. So they were like, dude, just do it anyway. I'm like, hell no. I'm like, my mama's going to whoop mine and your ass, bro. You don't know who this woman is. And so I pulled out and they're like, we already advertised for you. You're the main event. Like, this is a big deal. And a couple days later, I called him back and I said, you know what? I have to do this. I have to do this. This is my choice. I'm going to accept the fight, but I'm not telling my mama. And you better not either. And they're like, all right, sounds good. But you are giving me 2 tickets because I'm going to leave them at home with a note telling them where I'm going to be, but I'm going to hide it until it's time. And they're like, all right, sounds good. And I showed up and I beat the hometown hero in 1 minute. And I left the tickets there with a note saying, I'm sorry. If you guys want to show up, here's the tickets, front row. And when I looked out in the crowd, I saw them both sitting there watching me. And it meant the world to me that they were there. And from that moment on, they didn't support my decision, but they supported me. And I beat hometown hero after hometown hero and worked my way up the rankings. And I was always told that you want to spend about 10 fights as an amateur before you go pro. So I spent 20 fights in the amateurs waiting to go pro, fighting UFC fighters now. Devin Clark, I fought him 3 times. Miles Marshall, I fought him once. I fought Enrique Torres. All the baddest dudes in the Midwest, I fought these guys as amateurs. These guys were all professional level easy, but I took the long way around and I took my sweet time and before I went pro. So by the time I got there, I was somebody to be reckoned with, and that's just kind of how I got my start in the sport.
Now fighting for that interim light heavyweight title Friday night. You didn't know that, though, when you signed the contract. So when you're hit up and asked to rematch Jared Warren, what's that conversation like?
Well, whenever my manager called me, Kevin said, I got you the world championship fight, and it's against Jared Warren. And so he told me right away what it was. And I just told him, I'm like, hey, man, you just want to hand me the belt now? And he thought that shit was super funny. But that's a big deal for me. Jared's a beast, but he's not going to beat me. I am more of a beast. We have not fought the same level of competition with the exception of Isaac Doolittle. We have not fought the same level of competition. Everybody that I fought is top of the line. I'm more prepared for this than he is. And as much as I like the guy, I'm coming to drop bombs. If he thought I was tough before, which I was tough before, but you got to understand, when I fought Jared the first time, I was doing burpees and punching a exercise ball, bro. I didn't spar. I watched a few YouTube videos. I basically just went on a bunch of runs and showed up and beat his ass. I was not training, dude. I should have been, but at that time I was told that he was a nobody. I was told that he had a weak chin. My original manager lied to me about his credentials. So when I showed up, I thought I had an easy fight, and
Not a dude with a background.
Yeah, I didn't know shit about his background. I'd heard that he was like an amateur world kickboxing champion. So I called my manager and I was like, dude, is this a somebody? And he's like, no, dude, no. He said, Jared is a weak fighter. He's only beaten the easiest dude in the sport. And he's got a weak chin. Everybody's a world kickboxing champion these days. He's like, yeah, on every street corner, there's a world kickboxing champion. There's 100 different promotions. He's like, you got an easy fight coming up. So when I went to fight Jared, I was shocked at how much harder of a fight he was. So after the fight, I was going to retire. I called my coach and I was like, hey, man, I'm like, if this is a nobody with a weak chin, I probably don't belong in this sport because I thought I was a badass and this nobody gave me a little bit of trouble. So I think I'm going to retire. And he was like, oh, no, let's go talk to his coach. And I showed up and they explained to me who Jared Warren was. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I feel a little bit better about that now. But yeah, Jared's he's a good fighter. He's gotten better. He's beatable. He's beaten some big name guys. He's a strong southpaw, and I like him a lot because I really like his personality. He's a good dude, and I don't want to disrespect him in any way because I like him. We've chatted up for years. I gave him a few tips on how I beat him. I told him my strategy. I told him what I did to beat him. I gave him a few tips going forward, and I said, hopefully I don't got to fight him again because he's tough. But after I rebuilt my style, that only one of us has completely reinvented our style. Only one of us looks vastly different when we step into the ring now. And it's easy to see who that was. So I fully intend on this being a first round knockout. And Jared is not going home with a belt. I know he thinks that he is. He's living in a delusional world where he's beaten guys that shouldn't be fighting him. And he's got confidence, and that's not to his advantage. It would have been better if he would have fought better guys and lost, or better guys and won, because he would have a better idea of where his actual skill level is. I think he's riding a wave that is going to crash in on him on Friday night. And I feel bad. I've already envisioned the win, and I feel bad because I like the guy. I don't want to hurt him. I want him to win too. Like I want him to be a champion, but I can't allow him to win. I don't have that inside of me. I can't allow that to happen. And that sucks because I wish that it could be different. I wish he'd go to 175 and beat the shit out of those guys so he could be a world champion, because I think he in a way deserves it, but he can't be a champion against me.
Do you believe right now, and you feel like you're at the place, you're ready to take the title and take on that challenge of Lorenzo Hunt again, that you've put your game in the order that you're like, yeah, this is all, everything is in place for me to be the champion?
Yeah, listen, when I fought Jared, I'll be straight up with you. I fought him half blind, and I'm not going to he caught me with a punch in round 2 that knocked my contact out and broke my nose. So I couldn't see and I couldn't breathe. I had negative 5.75 vision, and I'm not going to make an excuse here, but I'm beyond double legally blind without my contacts in. And it's even weirder when there's only one in, because now I can see out of one and I can't see out of the other, and my fucking nose is sideways and I can't breathe. Right. And I still crush that dude. And so I'm like, you got to understand that since then I've had LASIK. Since then, I snapped my nose back into place that night by myself. Like, I'm a tough dude. I don't quit. I broke my hand fighting him, and I don't tell people this. I fought through a few injuries that night, and since then, my eyes are fixed. Not a problem. My last 2 fights, my hands aren't breaking anymore. I've already broken it too many times. It's too strong. I can breathe better. I've had my nose corrected. Like, there's so many. And when I fought him, like I said, I was only doing burpees. I'm now doing the best strength and conditioning program on the planet by Phil DeRue. It's the heavy hitter program. Phil DeRue was ranked the #1 combat strength and conditioning coach on the planet 2 years in a row. And I've been using his program for the last 2 years. And you can see a difference in my body structure now than when I fought Jared. My power is 3 times what it was. My strength and cardio is out of this world. My accuracy is tripled. It's gonna be a bad night for him. And in a way, I know he knows it. And he has to accept this fight because it's his only chance to get that world championship fight at this point. And I don't want to hurt him too bad. I want to win, but if I can do it without hurting him, that would make me a lot happier. And as far as fighting Lorenzo Hunt, let's be honest about that too. That's a shit night for anybody on the planet. It's not how I want to spend a Friday night. Fighting Lorenzo sucks bad, and I will do it. And I strongly believe that since I got my eyes fixed and I've changed my workout program and my style, that I'll be a much more dangerous fighter now. I don't think Lorenzo's going to come back down to that weight division to fight me just to defend a 185 title. I think that he has easier fights at 205 and heavyweight. I'm not going to put it past him. And honestly, by what I just did may piss him the fuck off and come back down to my weight division just to fuck me up. But he has to understand that I'm going to just come back again. He finished me in round 5 blind. I fought the first time he punched me in round 1, 2 seconds in, he landed a right hand and it knocked my contact out. That was when I decided I had to get LASIK. I fought him blind for 5 rounds, and I made it further than anybody in the world has ever made it against him, and still managed to light him up a little bit in round 2. I will be a tougher fight, and he will probably whoop my ass. Let's just be straight about that. But I will come back again. And then if I win, I know he's going to come back. So it's going to be this dog-eat-dog thing for the 185-pound division between me and him. And if Richmond gets bored, he comes his ass back up to 85. It's going to be us 3. I don't know anybody else in our weight division that can take us. We're too tough. Our chins are too tough. We hit too hard. We're unstoppable. And I think Lorenzo will probably be the champion for a while. I mean, I'd be honest, I don't want to fight the dude, but I will do it. I will get in the ring with him, and we will have a hard time finishing each other. So it's just not a fun night, He can finish other dudes easily at 205. So I'm like, yo, bro, stay there. Stay at 205. Let's all be champions.
You shared with me before we started, and we only got a couple minutes left before the call shuts down. But that you moved around a lot as your kid. Your father, shout out to him for serving the country. Does that make you and fighting, does it make it easier? Like you're able to adapt because you're used to moving around, adapting to new situations a lot?
That's an absolutely genius question, and I appreciate you for asking that. But yes, when as a kid, I was 5 years old when I moved from a little town called Alapaha, Georgia, which I'm talking, bro, I was so hillbilly. My whole language was messed up, dude. I grew up on the farm, bro. When I moved to Anchorage, Alaska, man, I didn't know shit about the English language. I was walking up to, people going, "Hey, y'all want to play on that there snow hill down yonder?" And they were like, "Well, we're going to whoop this kid's ass every single day because he sounds different." I was bullied every single school that I lived at, every single time I moved. I had no friends. I would show up, the bullies would target me. And then once I was targeted, other kids would join in, and I had to fight every single place I went. And what it did was it built a kid that hated bullies. I hated that shit. But I also had a big heart, and I didn't like fighting. So I would allow them to harass me until the point that it became physical. And then they would attack me, and then a fire would be lit inside of me, and I would beat the living shit out of these kids. But I would allow it to go on until they touched me. And what I finally realized when I finally got to a sophomore year of high school was that it's a lot easier to just throw hands first. And the first time I stood up to it, I stood up to the biggest guy in my school. And once I whooped his ass, I realized I'm the baddest dude in my whole school. That was a weird thought for me. I had 800 kids in my school. And I looked around one year and I'm like, I used to be a kid that didn't hold my chin high. I didn't stand up for myself. I just wanted kids to like me. I wanted to fit in desperately because that's the one thing I never had. And it finally dawned on me that I did not need anyone else's approval and that I could beat the shit out of every single human being that I come into contact with in my entire school, which meant that I'm top dog. And I started carrying myself differently, and people stopped messing with me, and they started complimenting me, and people started reaching out. Next thing you know, I had people inviting me to parties, trying to be my friend. At that point, I had already blown them all off. I didn't want any piece of these kids anymore, And so I'm a loner. I don't crave attention. I don't go out. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't party. I'm not out to hook up with chicks. I just train. I do me. I don't need anyone else. I do not need attention. The only thing that I need is to prove that I'm the baddest dude on the planet. It's all I want. And so I'm working my ass off to do that.
He's Josh Dyer, Friday night, BKFC 47, Lakeland, Florida. If you're in the surrounding area, get a ticket, be there live. It's going to be outstanding. We got 2 world title fights on the card. It's going to be mayhem. Before I let you go, Josh, was there a last message out there for the supporters and the followers?
Yeah, just make sure you guys watch this. I've been fighting since I was 18 years old, and I've been wrestling since I was 13 years old. I've been a combat athlete for going on 20 years. And it's all coming to this moment. This Friday, I will be declared the baddest dude in the world in my weight division for the first time in my life. And for all the people that doubted me, thank you, because you're the ones that fueled me. And for all the people that stuck with me and believed in me when I wanted to quit and when I wanted to retire because I had run into opposition that I believed I couldn't beat, and they lifted me up and said, "Josh, even though you don't believe you can win, we believe you can win." And then I won. They taught me that having a strong support system can allow you to be the baddest dude on the planet for a single night. And that's what I intend to do. I will not stop. There's nothing that Jared can do to me that will stop me. I've never stopped from a broken bone. I've never stopped from breaking my hand, breaking my face, losing my vision. I fight until there's nothing left in my entire body. And you'll see that there's nothing that Jared can do to me that will break my spirit. Because when you have a person that refuses to quit, that doesn't get tired and pays attention, he is a force to be reckoned with. And that is who I am. I do not stop. And that is why my nickname is D-Day. Because just like the Americans stormed the beach of Normandy against all odds, against an overwhelming force, they persisted and they took heavy casualties and they won. And that is what I will do.